Hey, everyone. Today, we're diving into another terrifying case. Make sure to support my channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Toxic relationships can be like slow-acting poison. At first, the symptoms are subtle, almost invisible. But over time, they seep into your life, making every day feel suffocating. Anxiety, fear, a constant sense of insecurity. Often, people don't even realize they're trapped until it's too late. For Alice Avery Burkett, it was too late. On a quiet October evening in 2020, a young mother was brutally murdered in a parking lot near her workplace. At first, the police suspected her ex, the father of her child. It made sense. Their relationship had been rocky, full of bitterness and conflict. But no one could have guessed who was truly responsible for the horrifying crime that would shake an entire community. Alice was born on August 18, 1996, in Carrollton, Texas, a peaceful suburb of Dallas known as one of the best places to live in America. She was the younger of two daughters in a loving, hard-working family. Her older sister, Madison, was the picture-perfect student, disciplined, goal-driven, and laser-focused on her career. Alice? She was the opposite, free-spirited, creative, a dreamer searching for her purpose. She struggled in school, barely scraping through graduation, and after multiple failed attempts to get into college, she gave up. Instead, she took a job as a waitress at a local bar and moved into a tiny apartment with her best friend, Anne. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but she was making the best of it. And then, one summer evening in 2017, he walked in. Andrew Beard. Andrew was nearly 10 years older than Alice, and unlike her, he had everything. Wealth, status, a booming business manufacturing power tools, a luxury home, expensive cars. He was even taking flying lessons, hoping to get his pilot's license. He was the kind of man who turned heads wherever he went. And the moment he saw Alice, he was captivated. Their relationship moved fast. At first, it was straight out of a fairy tale. Lavish dates, expensive gifts, and late-night drives in his luxury cars. He made Alice feel special, like she had finally found the life she always dreamed of. But fairy tales don't last forever. Within months, cracks started to appear. Andrew criticized her constantly, mocking her for not having a college degree, calling her unambitious, making her feel small. At first, the insults were disguised as jokes, but soon they turned sharper, crueler. Then came the control, the jealousy, the possessiveness. He wanted to know where she was at all times, who she was with, what she was doing. Alice felt trapped, suffocated, and she finally made the decision. She had to leave him. But just as she was about to walk away, everything changed. She was pregnant. Alice's best friend Anne would never forget that moment. She had heard quiet sobbing from the bathroom and walked in to find Alice on the floor, tears streaming down her face. When she asked what was wrong, Alice simply held up a positive pregnancy test. At first, she was overwhelmed, terrified. She even considered ending the pregnancy, but after days of deep thought, she made her decision. She was keeping the baby. When she told Andrew, his reaction surprised her. Instead of anger or panic, he seemed excited. Maybe, she thought, this could be a fresh start. Maybe, for the sake of their child, they could make it work. For a while, it seemed like they would. Alice even decided to go back to college to secure a better future. But the peace didn't last. 4 months later, things went back to the way they were. Only worse. The insults, the control, the suffocating toxicity. Alice couldn't take it anymore. At 7 months pregnant, she packed her bags and moved back in with her parents. The moment Alice left, Andrew's obsession took a new form. He wanted full custody of their unborn child. Alice knew she had to fight back. She consulted attorneys, determined to get sole custody. Andrew, on the other hand, was equally determined to cut her out of their child's life. He saw her as weak, incapable, unworthy of raising their baby. And with his wealth and legal connections, he had the power to make her life a living nightmare. On July 23, 2019, Alice gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Willow. Despite the stress of the ongoing legal battles, Alice was determined to build a stable future. She completed her college degree, landed a well-paying job as an executive assistant, and worked tirelessly to provide for Willow. But Andrew wasn't done with her. He dragged her to court again and again, arguing that he could offer Willow a better life. Alice spent every penny she had on legal fees. The battle drained her, mentally, emotionally, financially. But she never gave up. Eventually, the court established a visitation schedule. Andrew was allowed to see Willow on weekends. It seemed like things were finally settling down. But then, the unimaginable happened. One ordinary evening in October 2020, Alice finished her shift and walked toward her car in the parking lot. She never made it home. She was brutally attacked, stabbed multiple times, left bleeding on the pavement. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The police immediately suspected Andrew. He had the motive, the history, the obsession. But as they dug deeper, they uncovered a truth no one saw coming. Because the real killer was someone no one ever suspected. Alice had hoped that the storm had passed. For a while, it seemed like it had. Her daughter Willow was spending time with both parents, and for the first time in a long while, the tension with her ex, Andrew, appeared to have settled. But peace was a fragile illusion. In March 2020, Andrew started dating Holly Elkins, a woman slightly older than Alice, warm, friendly, and eager to bond with Willow. For 3 months, everything remained civil. The custody schedule was followed to the letter, and life found a routine. Then, in mid-April, Alice received a message from Holly. "I hope we can build a healthy relationship without any misunderstandings or animosity." Alice was taken aback. They had barely spoken before, yet Holly's words seemed genuine. Maybe, just maybe, this new dynamic would work. Then, on May 24th, Andrew was supposed to return Willow after his weekend with her. But he didn't. Alice waited. Hours passed. When she finally called, Andrew lashed out. "I'm tired of only seeing my daughter on weekends. This isn't fair." Wanting to avoid a fight, Alice let it slide. But Andrew wasn't done. The very next day, he filed for full custody, determined to strip Alice of her parental rights entirely. That was only the beginning of her nightmare. By early June, Alice felt an unsettling presence around her, eyes watching her from the shadows, cars trailing behind her on her way home. Stranger still, Andrew seemed to know things he had no way of knowing. Details about her legal conversations, the places she visited, even private discussions she had with friends. Then came the most chilling sign. Her car had been tampered with. Small things. At first, her belongings slightly out of place. But the unease settled into full-blown terror when she realized someone had been inside her vehicle. Then, in September, the horror escalated. A man named Frank Marrow reported Alice to the police, accusing her of selling illegal substances from her car. When law enforcement arrived at her workplace, demanding she open the trunk, Alice complied, confused but confident in her innocence. But the moment the trunk swung open, her breath caught in her throat. Inside were several packages of a powdery substance, wads of cash, evidence of a crime she had never committed. Handcuffs clamped around her wrists. She was taken into custody, her protests falling on deaf ears. Hours passed in the interrogation room as she pleaded her innocence. The evidence was damning, except for one thing. The police found no fingerprints, no DNA linking her to the drugs. It had been planted. With no proof to convict her, Alice was released. But the damage was done. She no longer felt safe, not in her home, not in her car, not even in her own skin. The feeling of being watched never left her, the fear growing with each passing day. Then came October 2nd, 2020. Alice parked in her usual spot outside her office building. That's when she saw it. A black SUV, windows heavily tinted, sitting just a few feet away. She barely had time to register it before the driver's side door swung open. A man stepped out. A black hoodie covered his head, his face obscured by a thick beard. He moved with purpose, a gun already raised. A shot rang out. Pain exploded through Alice's skull as the bullet tore through her left eye. But she didn't collapse. In a desperate bid for survival, she wrenched open her door, blood streaming down her face, and stumbled out onto the pavement. She screamed. The SUV had begun to roll forward, but it stopped. The attacker stepped out again, this time wielding a hunting knife. Alice tried to run. She never got the chance. The blade struck her over and over, her neck, her chest, her abdomen. Office workers, frozen in horror, watched from their windows as the attack continued. No one moved, no one intervened. Some dialed 911 with shaking hands. By the time the man sped away, Alice lay motionless on the ground. When police and paramedics arrived, it was too late. The brutality stunned even the most seasoned investigators. 44 stab wounds. A bullet lodged in her skull. The ferocity of the attack told them one thing. This was personal. Alice's family arrived moments later, their screams piercing the night, and when asked who could have done this, they pointed to one man without hesitation, Andrew. The day before, Andrew and Holly had taken Willow, claiming they'd return her soon. Now Alice was dead, and Willow was nowhere to be found. Police launched a statewide manhunt. Hours later, Andrew, Holly, and Willow were found in a car, heading toward Andrew's home. Brought in for questioning, the couple remained eerily calm, cooperative, as if none of this was a surprise. But the hunt for the truth had only just begun. Andrew was released due to lack of concrete evidence against him. Despite suspicions, investigators had no choice but to let him go. He was even allowed to take Willow home since he hadn't violated any custody agreement set by the court. However, Andrew was temporarily barred from returning to his house as authorities worked swiftly to obtain a search warrant. By evening, the warrant was secured, and detectives began combing through his property. Meanwhile, Andrew, Holly, and Willow checked into a nearby hotel, perhaps believing the storm had passed. But the real storm was just beginning. As investigators scoured Andrew's home, they uncovered several unsettling items. He legally owned multiple firearms, none of which matched the weapon used in the attack on Alice. However, the discovery of a silencer that didn't fit any of his registered weapons raised eyebrows. In the garage, an empty sheath for a large hunting knife was found, though there was no way to directly connect it to the crime. These were just the surface-level oddities. What they found next changed everything. On Andrew's personal computer, detectives discovered spyware programs designed to intercept and record Alice's calls and messages. Another program tracked her movements through GPS. As Alice had long feared, a tracking device had been secretly installed on her car, allowing Andrew to monitor her location at all times. But the revelations didn't stop there. Investigators soon uncovered a direct link between Andrew and Frank Marrow, the man who had previously reported Alice for allegedly possessing illegal substances. It turned out Andrew had orchestrated the entire setup. He provided Marrow with detailed instructions, a duplicate keyless entry device to Alice's car, and a significant payment to execute the plan. His ultimate goal? To frame Alice, have her imprisoned, and gain full custody of their daughter, Willow. Despite these shocking discoveries, authorities still lacked sufficient evidence to charge Andrew with Alice's murder. However, the illegal surveillance charges were enough to have him arrested. Yet, within 24 hours, Andrew was back on the streets, released on bail, though restricted from leaving the city. He reunited with Holly and Willow, attempting to return to a semblance of normal life. Then, on October 4th, a breakthrough occurred. A black SUV matching the description of the killer's vehicle was found abandoned in a remote area outside the city. Investigators confirmed it was the same car used in the attack. A closer examination uncovered chilling evidence, traces of Alice's blood, a bottle of dark foundation makeup, and a fake black beard stained with the same makeup. It was evident the killer had used these items to disguise himself as a black man. The most damning piece of evidence? DNA found on the fake beard matched Andrew Beard. With undeniable proof now tying him to the crime, Andrew was promptly rearrested and charged with first-degree murder. Custody of Willow was immediately transferred to Alice's maternal relatives. As the case unfolded, those close to Andrew struggled to accept the grim reality. Many insisted he was a devoted father incapable of such brutality. Even Andrew's own mother admitted she couldn't understand his obsession with sole custody of Willow, especially since he and Alice had already settled on a stable arrangement. But beneath that arrangement, Andrew's fixation had grown into something far more dangerous. Holly, on the other hand, was unwavering in her support of Andrew. She dismissed the allegations entirely, insisting that her fiancé would never commit such a crime. Despite mounting evidence, she refused to testify against him, refusing to cooperate with the prosecution in any way. Meanwhile, Andrew maintained his innocence, attempting to present an alibi that quickly fell apart under scrutiny. He was held in custody as investigators continued piecing together the full story. Holly, however, was released due to a lack of evidence connecting her to the crime. For 18 months, Andrew sat behind bars, unwavering in his denial. But then, something changed. One day, he voluntarily requested another interrogation and made a shocking confession. According to Andrew, the real mastermind behind everything was not him, but Holly. He revealed that while he and Alice had their differences, their tensions truly escalated only after Holly entered his life. Holly was known for her controlling and manipulative nature, wrapped in an angelic appearance that deceived those around her. She had an uncanny ability to charm and manipulate men, and Andrew had been no exception. Drawn in by his wealth and willingness to yield to her influence, Holly saw him as the perfect partner. But there was one problem. Holly couldn't have children of her own. And so, she became fixated on Willow, envisioning her as part of the perfect family she had always dreamed of. There was just one major obstacle standing in the way: Alice. Alice was deeply devoted to her daughter and would never willingly give her up. So, Holly devised a plan to strip Alice of her parental rights by discrediting her, attempting to have her imprisoned for years. The ultimate goal was for Holly to legally adopt Willow and eventually move with Andrew to another country, far away from Alice and her family. But there was another complication: Alice's parents. If Alice were imprisoned, her parents could petition for custody, ruining Holly's plans. And so, the scheme took a darker turn. The only way to guarantee Holly's twisted vision of a perfect family was to eliminate Alice entirely. As Andrew's confession unraveled the horrifying truth, investigators realized they had been chasing only half of the equation. Holly wasn't just an innocent bystander, she was the architect of a sinister plot, and now, with Andrew's testimony, the case against her was only beginning. It was supposed to be a simple visit. Andrew and Holly were picking up their daughter, Willow, from Alice's parents' house. But things took a turn for the worse when Holly, fueled by anger, provoked a heated altercation with Willow's grandparents. Her voice rose to a scream as she lashed out, attempting to escalate the situation into a physical fight. The tension was unbearable, emotions running high. Later that night, Holly called the police, claiming she had been attacked and that her life had been threatened. When officers arrived, she dramatically revealed bruises on her arms and back as supposed evidence of the alleged assault. But there was one problem. Her injuries didn't match her story. The police saw right through her lies, determining that she had never been in any real danger. This was just the beginning of Holly's twisted schemes. Holly, always calculating, had devised an even more sinister plan. She intended to frame Alice by planting illegal substances in her car, believing that the strict Texas laws would ensure Alice's arrest and permanent removal from their lives. But once again, the plan failed. The police saw through the deception, and Alice remained free. Frustrated and desperate, Holly decided there was only one way forward. Alice had to be eliminated. Holly manipulated Andrew, preying on his insecurities. She told him that if he were a real man, he would fight for his rights as a father. She painted Alice as the enemy, the one thing standing between them and their happiness as a family. Slowly, Holly tightened her grip on Andrew's mind, feeding him the idea that there was no other option. The murder was meticulously planned. Holly rented a vehicle under a fake identity, carefully disguising Andrew with makeup and a fake beard. Every step of the attack was orchestrated down to the smallest detail. Holly was certain they would get away with it. She believed that the police would focus their search on a black suspect, while Andrew, who had no criminal history, would remain above suspicion. But no plan is ever foolproof. Andrew made mistakes, critical mistakes. He left behind a trail of evidence that detectives followed like a breadcrumb path leading straight to him. By May 2023, the truth unraveled. Under mounting pressure, Andrew confessed. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. First-degree murder. He was sentenced to 43 years in prison, with no chance of parole for at least 30 years. And what of Holly? She thought she had escaped. Just 2 weeks after Andrew's arrest, she fled to Michigan, where she bought an apartment and slipped into a quiet life. For nearly 2 years, she lived under the illusion of safety, believing she had outsmarted the law. She had convinced herself that she would never face consequences for her actions. But justice has a way of catching up. One ordinary morning, there was a knock at Holly's door. As she opened it, her world collapsed. Police officers stood before her, their expressions unreadable. Within seconds, she was in handcuffs, her perfect disguise shattered. Holly was taken into custody, and the truth she had buried was finally unearthed. Desperate to save herself, she turned on Andrew, painting him as a monster. She claimed she had been aware of his intentions but was too terrified to intervene. She insisted she had no part in the crime. But the evidence told a different story. Investigators uncovered damning proof: search history, receipts, messages. Holly had not only known about the murder but had orchestrated it. It was she who had purchased the weapons, the knife and the gun, months before the attack. There was no escaping the truth now. In August 2024, the verdict was handed down. Holly Elkins was found guilty on multiple charges: incitement, orchestrating the crime, complicity, and tampering with evidence. The sentence was swift and final, 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. As for Willow, the innocent child caught in the crossfire of her parents' crimes, full custody was granted to her maternal grandparents. Perhaps now, in their care, she would finally find the peace that had been stolen from her.
This was today's true story. Our aim is for people to learn from such incidents and strive to improve society. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.